Excuse me, sir, but what you just said is a linguistic trap. If they sign, they'll lose control of everything. The room froze. A dozen suits turned their heads in perfect unison. Some blinked in disbelief. Others narrowed their eyes, unsure who had dared to interrupt the most powerful man in the room. At the far end of the long marble conference table sat Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid. His impeccably tailored gray suit, reflecting the soft chandelier light. His words, spoken seconds earlier in a dialect of Arabic unfamiliar to most American ears, still hung in the air like a smoke nobody had noticed until it stung. The voice had come from the side wall, not from any of the translators, or the legal team, or even the row of executive assistants silently typing notes. It had come from a woman holding a silver tray of bottled water standing straight, her back to the wall like she'd trained herself to disappear. Her name tag read, Maya. Maya Williams didn't flinch under the dozen startled stares. Her hand didn't shake. She gently placed the water on the nearby table, straightened her posture, and met Sheikh Hassan's gaze. Not confrontational calm, focused, certain. He studied her. The quiet arrogance of a man used to being the smartest in the room faltered for a second. Only a second. "You speak Arabic?" he asked, switching to English now, his tone sharp but composed. Maya responded in Arabic, the same dialect he had just used. "And I understand the difference between intention and manipulation, Your Excellency," someone gasped. A white-haired partner from Landstone Holdings leaned back in his leather chair, flustered. "Is she even on the staff?" "She's a server," someone whispered. Danielle ignored them. Her eyes remained on the sheikh. "What you just said, Will, leave the option open for adjustment based on local compliance," was interpreted as benign. "But the way you phrased it implies you can override any decision retroactively." "That's not a safety clause. It's an override clause." The translator beside Sheikh Hassan looked down at his notes, visibly sweating. "Do you have legal training?" the sheikh asked. "I have a master's degree in international finance," she replied, still in Arabic. "And I worked 3 years for an investment board in Abu Dhabi before returning to care for my mother." The sheikh's eyes hardened. "You interrupt my statement in front of my counterparts, then accuse me of deception? This is disrespectful." Maya's lips tightened, but she stood firm. "I meant no disrespect, sir. Only clarity. You are not part of this negotiation. You are a maid," he said coldly. "Security should escort her out." Maya felt heat surge up her neck. Across the table, someone muttered, "Let her speak. She might be right." Another voice, Robert Malloy, from Landstone, intervened with cautious diplomacy. "Your Excellency, perhaps we should clarify the clause before proceeding, for everyone's confidence." The sheikh didn't respond immediately. His gaze bore into Maya. Then, with a wave of his hand, he dismissed the idea of removing her. But he did not apologize. "You worked in Abu Dhabi?" he asked. "Yes." "Where?" "The National Sovereign Fund. Internal Risk Review Division." The sheikh tilted his head. "You're not just a maid." "No," Maya said quietly, "but that's what pays the bills right now." He didn't smile, but he nodded once, then turned to his translator. "How long have you known she was right?" The man froze. I thought." "Leave," Hassan said. The translator hurried out, briefcase flapping. Maya stood still, unsure what to do now. She could feel her heart pounding, the heat rising in her neck. Was she about to be thanked or fired? The sheikh turned to Malloy. "This meeting is over. We will reconvene when your team has someone capable of understanding the documents. But tomorrow, noon." He stood. Maya quietly exited, walking down the long, echoing corridor toward the staff elevator. She passed a few junior analysts, all too stunned to look her in the eye. As the elevator doors closed behind her, her shoulders finally sagged. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she hadn't let herself disappear, and someone important had listened. Maya stepped out into the back hallway of the Empire Grand Hotel, the heavy door closing behind her with a thud that echoed like final judgment. She walked quickly, not stopping until she reached the service elevator. As the numbers lit up one by one, descending from the top floor, her hands trembled. She clenched them into fists and forced herself to breathe deeply. One breath in, one breath out. She had just challenged one of the wealthiest men in the world in front of a dozen powerful executives, and now she was standing next to a mop bucket. The elevator opened. Inside stood Carmen, one of the housekeepers. Her eyes widened when she saw Maya. "Girl, what did you do up there? Half the kitchen's buzzing." Maya gave a tight smile. "I might have said a little too much." Carmen tilted her head. "Too much? Or just enough?" "I don't know yet," Maya said as the elevator descended. "Maybe both." They rode in silence for a moment. Then Carmen touched her arm gently. "You did what you had to. You looked out for them even, if they didn't know they needed it." Maya nodded. She wanted to believe that, but reality was more complicated. When she got back to the employee locker room, her supervisor, Mr. Jenkins, was waiting. He looked like he'd been sweating bullets for 20 minutes. "You're on thin ice," he said without even a greeting. "I've already got 3 calls from upper management." "I wasn't trying to cause trouble," Maya said. "I overheard something dangerous. I spoke up. You spoke out of turn. That was a multi-billion-dollar meeting." He paced. "You embarrassed them. You embarrassed this hotel." "No," Maya said, voice calm. "I protected them from signing away their rights." He paused. "Be that as it may, Maya, you can't just—" A new voice interrupted. "She stays." Both of them turned. Standing in the doorway was Veronica Ellison, the hotel's general manager. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and a commanding presence, she was rarely seen outside her corner office. Now she stepped into the room like a judge descending into court. "Miss Williams showed more insight in 5 minutes than some lawyers do in 5 months, Veronica continued. "She'll not be punished for that." Mr. Jenkins sputtered, but didn't argue. Veronica looked at Maya. "You're off floor duties for the rest of the day. Come to my office at 3. Maya nodded slowly, stunned. Veronica walked away without another word. At 2:55, Maya stood outside the office on the 31st floor, her palms slick with sweat. She smoothed down her uniform, suddenly aware of the faded stitching on the collar. When Veronica opened the door, Maya stepped inside cautiously. The room was minimalist but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson. Framed awards lined the wall. A single photo on the desk showed Veronica shaking hands with President Carter, decades ago. "Sit," she said. Maya obeyed. Veronica studied her. "You worked in Abu Dhabi?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why did you leave?" "My mother got sick. I came back to help. Then, after she passed, well, the gap on my resume scared people. They stopped seeing my degrees, just saw my skin, my name." Veronica nodded. "That's the world. But today, you made the right people notice." Maya said nothing. "I looked you up," Veronica said, tapping her keyboard. "National Sovereign Fund, 3 years. Oversaw risk compliance for contracts over $100 million. Yes. You could have walked away today. Let them sign. Let them fall." Maya looked down. "I couldn't. I knew what that clause meant." Veronica leaned back. "You want back in?" Maya blinked. "Back in? The real world. The table. You've still got the mind, the spine. What you lack is opportunity. Let's change that." Maya sat back, stunned. I don't know. I haven't touched a legal document in years." "That didn't stop you from saving a deal." Veronica stood and handed her a thick binder. "This is the draft contract they were reviewing. Annotate it. Show me where the problems are. You have 24 hours. Maya clutched the binder like a life raft. "Thank you." As she stood to leave, Veronica added, "And Maya, what you did took courage. That kind of courage doesn't go unnoticed." Back in the staff lounge, Carmen stared at the binder in Maya's hands like it was made of gold. "Girl, is that what I think it is? I think I'm being tested." "No, baby," Carmen said with a proud smile. "You're being seen." Maya stayed up late that night. She brewed a pot of tea, sat at the tiny kitchen table in her 1-bedroom apartment, and spread out the binder with sticky notes, highlighters, and a pen that had belonged to her mother. Her living room light flickered every now and then, and the radiator clanged like an old man coughing in the corner. But Maya didn't care. Clause by clause, she dug through the document. The same patterns emerged: strategic ambiguity, retroactive language, ownership displacement disguised as partnership. If you feel inspired by Maya's courage to stand up for what's right, tap that like button and tell us in the comments where are you watching this from. You never know. Someone nearby might be watching with you too. Her back ached and her eyes blurred. At midnight, she poured herself another cup of tea and stared out the window. The city glowed beneath a sky smeared with orange haze. Somewhere out there, the world was shifting. And maybe, just maybe, she was shifting with it. The next morning, Maya stood once again outside Veronica Ellison's office. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours, but adrenaline carried her up the elevator, past the polished brass plaques and marble columns, and now to this moment. She clutched the annotated binder to her chest like it held her future because it just might. Veronica looked up as she entered. "You're early," she said, glancing at the clock. "I finished it," Maya said, placing the binder on the desk. "I flagged 10 sections with potential manipulation, 5 with cultural misinterpretation, and 3 with legal overreach that could trigger international arbitration." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "You worked all night?" Maya didn't answer directly. "It's cleaner now, but if they had signed yesterday, it would have been a disaster." Veronica opened the binder and flipped through the pages. Her expression stayed unreadable, but Maya noticed the occasional pausion at a margin note referencing Article 14 of the Foreign Investment Act, another next to a clause marked ambiguous authority handover. "You've still got it," Veronica finally said, closing the binder gently. Maya breathed out slowly, her hands clasped in her lap. "You remind me of someone," Veronica continued. "Your father, James Williams." Maya's heart skipped. "You knew my father?" "I did. He was the one who wrote the emergency financial reform proposals in the 90s. Quiet man, brilliant mind, never took credit." A lump rose in Maya's throat. "He used to say justice was a long road, but someone had to start walking." Veronica smiled faintly. "Seems you inherited more than his eyes." There was a soft knock at the door. An assistant peeked in. "Ma'am, the Sheikh's liaison is here. They've requested Maya be present at the noon renegotiation." Maya's eyes widened. "What?" Veronica stood. "It appears your voice carries further than you thought." Maya entered the conference room at 12:01 p.m., this time not as a server, but as a consultant. Her uniform had been replaced with a conservative gray dress, a leather binder in hand. She walked past the same men who had looked through her the day before. Now their eyes followed her, unsure, some skeptical, others respectful. Sheikh Hassan sat at the head of the table. This time, there was no translator beside him. He greeted her with a nod. "Miss Williams," Maya replied in Arabic. "Your Excellency." There was a flicker of a smile. He gestured for her to sit near him. Robert Malloy, looking more rumpled than usual, shifted in his chair. "We've reviewed the contract and acknowledged that certain clauses need clarification. With Miss Williams' input, we hope to reach mutual understanding." The negotiation began. Maya spoke sparingly, only when asked, but each time she did, the tension in the room shifted. Her tone was professional but direct, pointing out areas of friction and offering culturally respectful revisions. She translated between legal intent and diplomatic nuance, restoring equilibrium to a room that had nearly collapsed under misunderstanding. 2 hours in, the meeting paused for refreshments. Maya stepped into the hallway, needing air. As she leaned against the cool stone wall, a voice behind her said, "You don't belong here." She turned. A tall man in a dark suit, Michael Trent, junior partner at Landstone, stood with arms crossed. "Excuse me?" Maya replied. "You're not part of this deal. You don't have clearance. And you sure as hell don't have a seat at this table just because you corrected one sentence." Maya didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at him calm, composed. "My clearance," she said softly, "is written in the footnotes you ignored." Before he could answer, Veronica appeared beside them. "Mr. Trent, if you have concerns about staff assignments, you can take them up with me." Trent mumbled something and walked off. Veronica turned to Maya. "You okay?" Maya nodded. "He's just afraid of change." "Good," Veronica said, "because change is happening, and it's looking right at you." Back in the room, the tone had shifted. Sheikh Hassan leaned forward as Maya explained how to reword the compliance clause. She used a metaphor from Arabic literature about planting olive trees in soil foreign to them but tending them with care. He listened, then nodded. "You speak with more than language," he said. "You speak with understanding." By the end of the meeting, Both sides had agreed to rewrite the contract. No one said it out loud, but the room knew Maya had brokered the balance. As the executives filed out, Sheikh Hassan remained seated. "Maya," he said, "you spoke truth to power yesterday. That is dangerous and rare." She bowed her head. "I didn't plan to speak. I just couldn't stay quiet." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. "In our culture, when someone saves a negotiation, we give them a token. Not as payment, but as memory." He placed the coin in her palm. It was old, etched with Arabic script, and worn at the edges. "Thank you," she said quietly. Later that night, as Maya returned home, she placed the coin next to her father's photo on the bookshelf. The light from the lamp caught the metal just right, casting a long shadow behind it. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and more than that, she felt remembered. 2 days after the renegotiation, Maya Williams found herself walking into a room she never imagined entering. It wasn't the conference hall, or Veronica's office, or even the towering suite of the Sheikh. It was the legal department on the 35th floor, behind a biometric door she had once walked past carrying a tray of bottled water. Now, she was stepping in with a clearance badge and a fresh ID clipped to her blazer. Inside, the room buzzed with the sound of controlled chaos, legal analysts murmuring over contract printouts, assistants typing notes, a dry erase board filled with flowcharts and deadlines. As Maya entered, half a dozen heads turned. Some eyes narrowed with skepticism. Others simply blinked, surprised. At the far end of the room stood a familiar figure. Veronica Ellison, flanked by Harold Keene, the firm's senior legal counsel. "Maya," Veronica said, her voice crisp, "glad you're here. We're reviewing preliminary drafts for the next 2 joint ventures with the Sheikh's firm. We'd like you to audit the equity clauses." Harold looked at Maya with raised eyebrows. "You're not a licensed attorney." "I'm a licensed analyst with expertise in cross-border finance and risk compliance," Maya replied calmly. "I don't need to argue the law. I just need to flag the traps." He gave a non-committal grunt and returned to the documents. As Maya settled into a desk beside the legal team, her fingers ran over the surface of the polished mahogany. She remembered wiping tables like this just a few weeks ago. Now, she was reviewing documents that could impact millions. But the transition wasn't without friction. Hours into her audit, a junior analyst named Cynthia leaned over. "Just curious," she said in a low voice. "How does one go from housekeeping to high table? That's some kind of DEI initiative?" Maya kept her eyes on the page. "I guess when you know what a trap clause looks like in Arabic." The door opens. Cynthia chuckled bitterly and turned away. Maya took a breath. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because they had failed to see what mattered, and she hadn't. By late afternoon, Maya flagged 3 major inconsistencies. One clause shifted liability in the event of market fluctuations, potentially exposing the hotel to foreign lawsuits. Another subtly restructured control rights under the guise of flexibility. And the third, buried deep in the IP, licensing implied a surrender of brand usage in perpetuity. She emailed her notes to Veronica, then walked down to the cafe in the lobby for a moment of peace. As she stirred her tea, a man approached. He wore a tailored navy suit and carried a leather briefcase embossed with gold initials. Maya recognized him, Philip Warren, external counsel and longtime advisor to Landstone Holdings. "You made quite the impression," he said as he sat across from her without asking. "I'm just doing my job." Philip leaned in. "I've read your annotations. They're sharp, some might even say aggressive." Maya gave him a level look. "Some might say effective." He smiled faintly. "You're stepping on some very old toes, Miss Williams. Just be careful where you aim your heels." Maya set her teacup down. "I don't aim to step on anyone, but I won't walk around traps to protect egos." Philip nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but in this city, truth has sharp edges, and it tends to cut the ones who carry it." With that, he stood and walked off. That evening, Maya received a message from Veronica, a private meeting, 7 p.m. top floor. She arrived at the penthouse suite, unsure what to expect. When the doors opened, she was greeted by candlelight, classical jazz, and the Sheikh himself, seated near the balcony. He rose. "Maya, please sit." She hesitated. "I didn't know this would be private," Yes, it had to be. Too many ears downstairs. She sat across from him. I wanted to thank you, he said. We finalized the amended contracts today. Because of you, we avoided a future war. Maya inclined her head. I just did what anyone with a conscience would. No, he said softly. Most would stay silent. You challenged me, publicly, and you were right. A long pause stretched between them. Then he added, I've had many advisors. Few I trust, fewer I remember. Maya smiled politely. I'm not looking to be remembered, just useful. He chuckled. Then allow me to offer something useful in return. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a contract consulting work with his firm's U.S. division, a generous retainer, remote flexibility, full access to global teams. I can't, Maya started. You already have, he said. This is just formalizing what you've proven. She held the contract with careful hands. It was more than a job. It was recognition, redemption. Later, as she stood outside under the night sky, the wind brushing her cheeks, Maya looked up at the glowing windows above Manhattan. Just weeks ago, she was wiping fingerprints off glass in those offices. Now, she was rewriting what went on inside them. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, she had a seat at the table. And she wasn't giving it up. 3 days into her new consulting role, Maya Williams arrived early at the downtown office of Al Rashid Capital's American branch. The building, with its black glass exterior and sleek marble lobby, buzzed with quiet precision. Maya wore a charcoal blazer and soft leather flats. Practical. Confident. She carried a tablet loaded with reports and a mind sharpened by years of silence and watching. But she wasn't just seen now, she was being watched. It began subtly. Files she requested disappeared for hours before reappearing incomplete. Her badge access would glitch at certain doors, forcing her to wait until a receptionist fixed it. Comments were passed in hushed tones when she walked by. Not all of it was overtly hostile, but it was clear. Someone didn't like her there. Still, Maya pushed forward. That morning, she sat across from Amal Farid, a risk analyst from Dubai who had flown in to help onboard Maya. Amal was quiet but efficient, with a graceful demeanor and a sharp mind. As they combed through a logistics memorandum, Amal glanced up. You know they expected you to take the money and fade. Maya looked up. Who's they? The board, legal, half of your floor. Amal smiled softly. Instead, you came in and asked for the source documents. Ho. I don't the symbolics appointments. Clearly, they returned to their work, but the air around them shifted charged with mutual respect. Later that afternoon, Maya stepped into the copy room for a quick print job. As the machine hummed, she heard two voices outside the door. I'm telling you, she's digging too deep. She was supposed to nod politely, not question the Zurich transfer. She flagged it to Veronica. If it goes to compliance. The voices trailed off as the speakers walked away. Maya froze. Zurich transfer? She hadn't reviewed any documents mentioning Zurich. She returned to her desk, pulse racing. That night, in her small apartment, she opened her laptop and dug through archive documents. The system still let her access. Using a search filter, she typed Zurich. One result popped up buried in the footnotes of a miscellaneous assets file tied to a Shell subsidiary. The amount was staggering. $23 million marked as environmental reallocation. But there was no project attached, no timeline, no signatures, just a reference code and a transaction path that looped through 3 countries. Maya leaned back in her chair. This wasn't a mistake. It was a cover. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should she flag it or investigate further? Her phone buzzed. A message from Veronica. Private meeting. 7 a.m. my office. Alone. Ugh. Maya barely slept. At dawn, she dressed in dark slacks, a simple navy blouse, and tied her hair back. She entered the building through the side security entrance and rode the elevator alone. Veronica's office was lit by early morning sun. She stood by the window, arms crossed, coffee untouched on the table behind her. You found it, she said without turning. I haven't said anything, Maya replied. You don't have to. The system logs searches. I got the alert. Maya stepped closer. What is it? A payment. Disguised. It was pushed through just before the Sheikh's first U.S. visit. Some on the board wanted to sweeten the deal in advance. I only found out 2 weeks ago. And? I've been quietly gathering what I can, but I needed someone they wouldn't suspect. Someone they thought was too new, too unimportant. Maya's breath caught. You used me. Veronica turned. I trusted you. That's not the same. No, Veronica said quietly. It isn't. But Mayado, you know how many people in this building would rather let this disappear than risk a scandal? It's not just fraud. It's betrayal. To the sheikh, to our partners, and to the people who trusted this company. Maya looked down at her hands. What happens now? I need you to finish what you started. Find the full path of that money. The board meets in 10 days. If we can prove who authorized it, we can cut the rot. And if we can't, then you go back to wiping windows, and I get replaced by someone who'll pretend they saw nothing. Maya left the office in a storm of thoughts. Her head buzzed, but her heart was steady. This wasn't the job she signed up for, but it was the reason she'd been called. That night, in her apartment, Maya pored over encrypted files, connecting transaction IDs, tracing wire transfers through Cyprus, Singapore, and eventually Zurich. The deeper she went, the more disturbing it became. Names began to appear. One in particular made her pause. Philip Warren. The same man who warned her about truth's sharp edges. She snapped a photo of the file with her secure phone, encrypted the image, and sent it to Veronica. 1 minute later, her screen went black. A shutdown. System override. She stared at the dark monitor. In the hallway outside her apartment, footsteps echoed. Someone knew. Maya didn't move. The screen had gone black, but the hum of her computer tower remained, a ghostly echo in the quiet of her apartment. She sat frozen, eyes fixed on the blank monitor, her breath shallow. Then, she heard it again, the slow, deliberate sound of someone outside her door. One step, then another. The old floorboards of the hallway creaked under pressure, too heavy for a neighbor heading to the elevator. This was different. She stood up slowly, her mind racing. Her phone was still in her pocket. No service, no Wi-Fi. Someone had cut it. Another creak. She reached for the small desk drawer, pulling it open without a sound. Inside, nestled beneath old receipts, was her late father's silver flashlight. She gripped it tightly, not for light, but for weight. Then came the knock. A single, heavy knock that didn't ask for permission, it demanded it. Maya moved to the door and pressed her eye against the peephole. A man in a dark jacket stood there. No delivery, no badge, no expression. His face was blank, his posture calm, but his eyes swept the hallway like a predator. He knocked again. She didn't answer. After a minute, he turned and walked away, but not before pausing to look directly into the peephole, as if he knew she was watching. Maya waited until she was sure he was gone, then exhaled slowly. Her fingers trembled as she powered down the machine and yanked the hard drive from its case. She placed it into a sealed bag and tucked it under a loose floorboard in her closet. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, she was at a cafe 2 blocks away, using a prepaid phone and connecting through a public Wi-Fi. She sent an encrypted message to Veronica. I was breached. Suspect physical tail. Must meet off-site. 10 minutes later, the reply came. Understood. Elmhurst Library. Basement conference room. Noon. Burn this number. At 11:45 a.m., Maya entered the library. Her heart pounded with every step. This place once, a childhood haven of storybooks and silence, and now felt like the edge of a battlefield. Veronica sat alone at the far end of the basement conference room. No files, no laptop, just a pen and paper. You're not paranoid, she said as Maya entered. I got a security alert. Someone tried to access my drive remotely at 3 a.m. That's not a coincidence. I traced the Zurich path, Maya said. The final signature is from Philip Warren. He's the key, but someone already knows we've found him. Veronica leaned forward. Then we move now. Quietly. You have the backup? It's hidden. I'll retrieve it tonight. Good. Because tomorrow, I'm taking this to the sheikh himself. Maya's eyes widened. You're not going through compliance? Not with the board compromised. He deserves to know who's betraying him. Maya nodded. Then I'll get you what you need. That night, Maya returned home through the back stairwell, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her apartment was quiet, no signs of forced entry. She moved quickly, pulling the floorboard and retrieving the drive. But when she turned, she wasn't alone. Philip Warren stood in her living room. "Well done," he said, voice smooth. "I told you the truth cuts both ways." Maya didn't flinch. "You're not here for small talk." "No," he admitted. "I'm here to offer a deal." She raised an eyebrow. "You break into my home to negotiate?" "I prefer the word intervene." "Intervene in what?" "In your crusade." "Maya, listen, this game, it's not about right or wrong. It's about who survives the fallout. And I'm offering you a way out. 6 figures, a new name, a fresh start." She stared at him. "So I disappear, and you keep laundering money through cultural exchanges and shell firms?" He shrugged. "Something like that." "Number." His face hardened. "Then understand this. The moment Veronica steps into that meeting, she's done. They'll bury her in red tape. And you'll go from consultant to cautionary tale." Maya's voice dropped. "You threatened me the day we met. Now you're just confirming who you really are." Philip stepped closer. "You have no idea what world you're in." "Maybe," Maya said, "but I'm learning fast." She reached into her pocket and clicked a small Divisian old recording dongle clipped to her coat. It had been running since she walked in. Philip looked down. "That won't hold up in court." "It doesn't have to," she said. "It just has to make it to the sheikh." He stared at her for a long second, then turned and walked out. The next morning, Veronica received a USB envelope delivered by courier. No sender, no return address. Inside, a note in Maya's handwriting. "The rest is up to you." Veronica slipped the USB into her tablet and pressed play. The sheikh listened silently, as Philip's voice echoed through the speakers, arrogant and confident. When it ended, there was a long pause. He looked up, eyes steeled. "We end this." For the first time in decades, Maya Williams had lit a match in the dark corridors of corporate silence. And now, fire was coming. The morning sun pushed through the glass facade of Al Rashid Capital's American headquarters, but the energy in the boardroom felt colder than Manhattan winter. Maya Williams slid into the chair beside Veronica Ellison, the two women poised against anticipation. Today's agenda: new venture proposals and, most critically, addressing the clandestine payment that Philip Warren orchestrated. Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid entered first, his presence commanding. He moved directly to the head of the table without exchanging pleasantries. His eyes, dark and discerning, passed over each board member before settling on Maya. "Miss Williams," he said in English, voice soft but firm, "your evidence was compelling." Maya inclined her head. "Thank you, Your Excellency." Veronica adjusted her notepad and clicked her pen. "We've reviewed the USB and corroborated it with internal audit trails." She turned to the sheikh. "Mr. Warren authorized the transfer without full board approval. He even manipulated compliance controls to cover the trail." She keyed a slide onto the display behind her, showing wire routes through Cyprus, Singapore, then Zurich. There was a collective murmur. Maya noticed half the room stiffened, particularly Philip's legal counterpart, who looked pale. A golf partner piped up, voice measured. "If this happened before my arrival, why didn't it come up earlier?" Veronica responded without hesitation. "Because Mr. Warren removed those transactions from standard reporting. Internal audit flagged minor inconsistencies, but Warren denied access." She turned back to Maya. That's when Maya began tracing it through encrypted logs. The room swallowed hard. Sheikh Hassan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "I entrusted my American operations to experienced professionals. I did not expect deception from within." Silence filled the space. "I want an independent inquiry, and until that completes, Mr. Warren must step down from compliance duties." Even from where she sat, Maya could feel tension crackling. Philip Warren sat slack-shouldered but unbowed. Veronica clicked again. "Additionally, Miss Williams' workflow revealed equity provisions in upcoming venture contracts that mirrored yesterday's trap clause-vague language that could grant override authority retroactively." She paused. "There are 2 new proposals pending your signature, Sheikh. Might we have your permission to send them to Maya for review before final signing?" Sheikh Hassan's gaze sharpened. He turned to Maya. "Are you comfortable with that?" She swallowed. This was more than what she bargained for. "Yes, Your Excellency. I'd be honored to help." A Gulf partner nodded slowly. Then, it is done. A murmur of approval rose from the Western board members. Robert Malloy cleared his throat. Maya's participation here. It signals a new level of transparency. I support it. The sheikh inclined his head. Very well. Let it be known. No document reaches my desk without her review. As the meeting transitioned to new venture discussions, Maya felt both exhilarated and haunted. She introduced herself to Dr. Amal Farid, who had flown in again. They exchanged a silent understanding. Strength in partnership was growing. By midday, Maya was led to a small meeting room overlooking the river. Spread before her were digital drafts of 2 contracts, one for an energy tech joint venture, the other for a supply chain partnership with a Southeast Asian firm. Maya clicked open the first. The preamble looked conventional enough, but she quickly noticed a familiar phrase: contingent override based on regulatory realignment. She tapped the tracker and typed a note. Requires clear definition of realignment. Suggest amendment to specify jurisdiction and time limit. In the second draft, her eyes caught a section on IP licensing. Licensor grants exclusive rights in perpetuity as long as operational sustainability criteria are met. Operational sustainability, who defined it? What metrics? Perpetuity gave too much power to one party. She flagged. Define sustainability metrics. Limit term to 5 years. Require annual joint review. Her fingers hovered over the send button. She paused and then hit it. In that moment, she reminded herself. This was more than editing legal wording, it was preserving fairness. At 3 p.m., Veronica walked in, coffee in hand. Some board members questioned your suggestions, Philip especially. He called them unnecessary red tape. Maya pressed her pen. I'm not here to slow things, just to ensure clarity. Veronica smiled. That's all that matters. She called it red tape, said a firm voice beside her. Angelina Park, a senior compliance officer, stepped in. Someone needs to ask, why do these clauses keep surfacing in new deals? Maya nodded at Angelina. That's exactly why I flagged them. Angelina glanced at the screen, then at Maya. Good work. The afternoon progressed with Maya's comments rolling back to legal counsel. She was invited to speak up. She explained cultural differences from Gulf legal traditions, whose vague phraseology sometimes masks discretionary powers. She emphasized that in a Western corporate environment, transparency needed specificity. Each phrase she offered was met with nods from Gulf advisors and cautious curiosity from American counsel. At 5:30, the meeting ended. Veronica and Maya left together. Outside, Veronica slipped an arm through Maya's. You built a bridge today, but the foundation is still shaky. Maya exhaled. I saw the same issue in the first contract. I just didn't expect it to be systematic. Veronica shook her head. This goes deeper. But we'll patch each leak, one clause at a time. At her apartment that evening, Maya prepared dinner: a bowl of lentil soup, crusty bread, herbal tea. She turned on soft NPR background noise. The news reported low market volatility. Yet her world was volatile enough. Maya poured soup into 2 bowls, then hesitated, then ate half of each. She sipped tea and watched the city lights flicker. She thought of her father's briefcase, the one she kept tucked under her bedand, how he once said, "A bridge doesn't protect you from the storm. It lets you cross it." Tomorrow, there would be more decks, more clauses. But tonight, she crossed one more mile of the journey. Because a bridge, once built, must stand. By the 3rd week of Maya Williams' consulting tenure, something shifted, not just in the walls of Al Rashid Capital but within Maya herself. She no longer walked through the building unnoticed. Security guards greeted her with measured nods. Junior analysts whispered her name with equal parts curiosity and caution. Executives, once dismissive, now regarded her as a necessary piece of a dangerous puzzle. But with respect came pressure. Early Tuesday, Maya arrived at her temporary office to find a thick manila envelope waiting on her desk. No name, no stamp, just the words, "For your eyes only, Legacy Holdings." She shut the door, pulled the blinds, and opened the envelope. Inside were scanned copies of transaction ledgers from a subsidiary she didn't recognize, Legacy Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware but rerouted through Cayman accounts. There were repeated payments labeled infrastructure facilitation, totaling over $40 million in the last fiscal year. Each line item was vague. Some referenced offshore vendors, others were marked asset relocation, confidential. But one note, buried at the bottom of the second page, stood out: Q4 2023, Environmental Justice Initiative, redirected. Redirected? The word echoed. She dug deeper. Pulling up internal memos stored in archived email chains, Maya discovered that the Environmental Justice Initiative had been part of a public partnership approved for supporting water infrastructure in Native American reservations across the Midwest. Yet, the funds had never arrived. Instead, the redirection flowed to a private equity firm owned with ties to Philip Warren's college roommate. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just corporate fraud. It was moral theft money stolen from communities with poisoned wells and crumbling pipelines. She needed verification. Maya emailed Angelina Park and Amal Farid for a discreet meeting in the back cafe of the building. That afternoon, the three women sat in a booth tucked behind a potted fern wall. Maya slid the pages across. This came anonymously. Legacy Holdings. Cayman reroutes. 40 million. It should have funded tribal clean water. Amal scanned the pages, her eyes narrowing. That firm, I've seen it mentioned in our London files. Angelina leaned forward. You said redirected? To where? A shell firm in Nevada, owned by Northbriar Equity. Guess who sits on their advisory board? Warren. They both answered in unison. Amal whispered. He's more embedded than we thought. Angelina bit her lip. We need this on record. We go to the Sheikh again. Maya shook her head. Not yet. If we go now, Warren will bury it before we finish connecting the trail. We need hard, irrefutable evidence, not just traces. Amal tapped her pen. There's a retired financial controller, Elijah Rowe. He used to handle internal audits before he got pushed out during a restructuring. He might have originals. Maya nodded slowly. Can you reach him? Angelina offered. I'll try. He trusted me once. 3 days later, Maya, Amal, and Angelina sat in Elijah Rowe's modest townhouse in Queens. He was in his 70s, weathered, white beard neatly trimmed, and wore a thick cable-knit sweater. His home smelled of lemon polish and old paper. I knew this day would come, Elijah said, pouring tea. They thought I was too old, too slow. Truth is, I kept copies, not for revenge, for justice. He disappeared into a back room and returned with a dusty lockbox. Inside were ledgers, emails, and internal memos dating back 5 years, all tied to Legacy Holdings and the EJI funding. This is your smoking gun, he said. But be careful. Philip Warren isn't alone. Some of the names you'll find, they go higher than board level. Maya opened one ledger and felt a chill. Among the names was someone unexpected. Harold Covington, the firm's legal counsel and a personal friend of Sheikh Hassan's. Her heart pounded. If we name him, it'll shake everything. Elijah looked her in the eye. Then shake it, or this all happens again. That night, Maya reviewed every document. She connected timelines, flagged key transfers, and mapped the connections between Legacy Holdings, Northbriar Equity, and compromised accounts. She built a master file encrypted and backed up on 3 separate drives. In her notes, she labeled the final folder, the unseen ledger. At dawn, Maya sent one copy to Veronica, another to Amal and Angelina, and one to a secure external legal advisor that Elijah recommended, a former federal prosecutor turned corporate ethics consultant. Then, she waited. By 10 a.m., she received a reply from Veronica. This will burn down the house. Are you ready? Maya typed back. The house was already on fire. We're just ringing the alarm. She knew what came next. At the following board meeting, Veronica and Maya would present their findings in full. There would be no denials this time. They had signatures, timestamps, email chains, and Elijah's sworn affidavit. But more than that, they had truth. Not just corporate truth, moral truth. The kind that shines light into corners people hoped would stay dark. As Maya sat at her desk, sipping bitter black coffee, she looked out at the skyline. The wind rushed through the city, brushing against glass towers and forgotten alleys. Somewhere below, a child drank from a faucet in a reservation school water that might still be unsafe. But perhaps not for long, because someone had finally read the ledger. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, but in tone. Silence buzzed louder than speech, and the long mahogany table stretched between the accused and the accusers like a chasm. Maya Williams sat with her back straight, her laptop open, her fingers resting calmly on the keyboard. Veronica Ellison was beside her, exuding quiet fury. A folder of paper documents fanned in front of her like a deck of truth. Across the table, Philip Warren sat tight-lipped, a muscle twitching beneath his jaw. Harold Covington, the firm's legal counsel and until now untouchable, glanced between them with a forced smile, the kind worn by men who know the fall is coming but are still praying for a rope. Sheikh Hassan arrived last, flanked by 2 Gulf partners and his translator. He gave a brief nod, then took his seat at the head. "Proceed," he said, his voice low. Veronica began. "Your Excellency, what we are about to present is not just a financial discrepancy. It's systemic, it's deliberate, and it's a betrayal of everything your foundation was meant to stand for." She gestured toward Maya. Maya clicked a button. The monitor lit up behind her with a flowchart of transactions starting with Legacy Holdings, branching into Northbriar Equity, then scattering like spores into offshore accounts, all tied back to projects originally intended for humanitarian and environmental aid. "For 3 years," Maya began, her voice steady, "these funds were redirected, projects approved in good faith, including the Environmental Justice Initiative, were stripped of their allocated finances. Over $40 million vanished through layers of shell firms. We traced the IP signatures, we matched login credentials, and we obtained sworn testimony from Elijah Rowe, a former controller forced into early retirement after questioning these transactions." Veronica handed a printed affidavit down the table. A few board members leaned in, brows tightening. Maya continued. "The misdirection was intentional. Mr. Warren approved payments marked as infrastructure facilitation, often weeks before public votes. The oversight was not a clerical error, it was orchestrated." Philip opened his mouth, but Veronica raised a hand. "You'll have your turn." Sheikh Hassan gestuurd. "Let her finish." Maya clicked again. Another slide appeared, this one showing email correspondences. "Furthermore," she said, "we found communications between Mr. Warren and Harold Covington discussing contingency protections should this come to light. Language included phrases like redirect public outrage, utilize procedural delays, and, in one case, neutralize whistle potential." Harold's smile cracked. "This is taken out of context." Sheikh Hassan turned to him. "Is it your voice in these emails?" Harold shifted. "I cannot confirm without seeing the full threads." Veronica handed him a printout. "You wrote them. The 12th of June, the 3rd of July, the 19th of August." Maya interjected. "The date of the redirection aligns with the board's final sign-off on the EJI. You leveraged trust for gain." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the sheikh leaned forward. "Mr. Warren, Mr. Covington, do you deny these findings?" Philip stared at the screen, defiance flickering in his eyes. "We acted in the firm's best interest, diversifying assets, optimizing capital flow. By stealing humanitarian funds," one Gulf partner hissed. Harold tried a different tactic. "The legal structure allows for flexible allocations within subsidiaries." "Do not insult me," the sheikh snapped, his calm shattered. "We fund these initiatives to restore what others have broken, to empower what has been ignored, not to enrich charlatans in suits." He stood. "In accordance with Clause 7.4 of the Board Governance Charter, I am enacting emergency oversight and immediate suspension of both Mr. Warren and Mr. Covington. Their access to internal systems is revoked, pending formal investigation." A flurry of action followed. IT personnel entered the room. Philip's laptop was taken. Harold's phone was confiscated. Maya watched them both shrink. Not physically, but spiritually. The curtain had dropped. The act was over. Veronica whispered to Maya, "We did it." But Maya wasn't celebrating yet. Her eyes swept the room. She knew enough to recognize that snakes don't always slither out in the open. Some stay quiet and wait. After the meeting, the sheikh requested a private word with Maya. Inside his personal office, a sun-drenched suite lined with books and Middle Eastern art, poured her tea himself. "You have served this firm with more integrity in weeks than some have in years," he said. "Why did you fight so hard?" Maya hesitated. Because I've lived in places where justice was an afterthought, and I won't let it stay that way if I can help it. The sheikh nodded slowly. There is strength in that pain. I see it. He handed her a small envelope. My team will offer you a permanent advisory position. Full clearance, equal voice. Maya opened the envelope but didn't look inside. Thank you, but I need time to think. I respect that. That night, Maya sat on her fire escape, the city glowing beneath her. The air was cool. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. She looked at the envelope again, then set it aside. Her father's old compass sat beside her, the same one he carried through civil rights marches. This victory wasn't just hers. It belonged to every voice that had been ignored, every child without clean water, every worker whose ethics had been drowned by profit. And as she looked into the night, Maya knew this was just the beginning. The reckoning was here. And the ledger was no longer unseen. The following morning, the hallways of Al Rashid Capital buzzed with an energy that was neither relief nor celebration, it was uncertainty. Philip Warren and Harold Covington were gone, suspended indefinitely. Their names no longer appeared in the system directory, their offices locked down and sealed for audit. Yet power, Maya knew, never just disappears. It shifts, it waits, it searches for cracks. Maya walked into the 24th floor conference room for an unscheduled internal compliance meeting. At the head of the table sat Dr. Amal Farid, who had assumed interim oversight of internal risk management. Next to her were Veronica, Angelina, and two newly introduced partners, one from Dubai, the other from Houston. Amal started the session with clarity. We've removed two of the firm's most senior figures in less than 2 weeks. That creates a vacuum. And vacuums attract opportunists. Maya nodded. We can't allow the structural weaknesses they exploited to remain. If we only remove faces but keep the systems that protected them, we've done nothing. Veronica added. We need to rebuild with transparency from the inside out. That means redefining oversight processes. Real compliance, no performative. The Dubai partner, a lean man in a tailored navy suit, leaned forward. And it means some uncomfortable conversations. There are still stakeholders who supported Warren and Covington. The Houston partner, older and more grounded, spoke softly. People don't betray institutions by accident. They do it because they think no one's watching. Maya tapped her notebook. Then let's make watching a policy, not a reaction. By noon, the team had sketched the first draft of a new compliance framework. Mandatory quarterly audits with third-party oversight, anonymous whistleblower channels with guaranteed legal protection, and a rotating ethics committee with cross-departmental representation. It was radical, and it was necessary. Later that afternoon, Maya met privately with Veronica in her office. Veronica closed the door and offered her a seat. You've changed the rhythm of this place, Maya. People talk differently now. They listen. I didn't do it alone. No, Veronica admitted. But you were the match. And now you need to decide what kind of fire you want to light next. Maya exhaled. The sheikh offered me a permanent role, strategic ethics advisor. Veronica raised an eyebrow. And? I haven't decided. Because? Because staying means committing to a system I've only just started to trust, and leaving means walking away from the work that matters. Veronica leaned back. You know what I think? I think the system's only as honest as the people willing to stay and fix it. And you're honest. That evening, Maya took the subway to Brooklyn, to a community center where she used to volunteer. She hadn't been back in years. The center looked nearly the same, peeling paint, loud kids, metal chairs in the foyer, but the energy was familiar. She found Mr. Duncan, the retired teacher who once ran after-school programs there. Maya? He asked, adjusting his glasses. Hi, Mr. Duncan. It's been a while. You look like someone who's been fighting dragons. Maybe just their accountants. He laughed, a deep, crackling sound. Still sharp. Come in. They sat in his small office where walls were lined with old photos of students and volunteers. Maya explained what had happened, the whistleblowing, the contracts, the stolen funds meant for tribal communities. When she finished, Duncan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You remind me of your father. You know that? He never raised his voice unless it was for someone else. Maya looked down. I just wish he could see it. Oh, I think he does. As she left the center, Maya paused by the wall near the exit. There was an old photo from 20 years ago. A group of volunteers with fists raised in front of a mural. There, on the far right, was a teenage Maya beside her father, both grinning wide. She smiled. Some legacies didn't need monuments. Back at her apartment that night, Maya finally opened the envelope the sheikh had given her. The offer was generous, more than she had ever imagined earning. But it wasn't the money that struck her. It was the letter inside, handwritten, "Miss Williams, in the stories my grandfather told me, justice was always slow but inevitable. He said, the ones who light candles in dark rooms are the ones we remember. You lit a candle here. Stay, help us keep it burning. Huss, son." The next morning, Maya walked into the sheikh's office before the board convened. He looked up from his desk, surprised but calm. "I accept," she said. His eyes twinkled. "Then let us begin." At the meeting that followed, Maya was introduced not just as an advisor, but as a permanent voice on the strategic ethics panel, a role created in her name. Applause followed, not thunderous, but sincere. Even some who once doubted her nodded with respect. And when the meeting closed, and everyone filtered out into the hallways of marble and glass, Maya stayed behind. She looked at the empty boardroom, the place where lies had once sat dressed in suits and silk, and smiled. There was still so much work to do. But for once, power was on the side of truth. Maya Williams stepped back into the grand lobby of the Empire Grand Hotel with a sense of quiet purpose. Gone was the staff lanyard that once defined her, now replaced by a badge identifying her as Strategic Ethics Advisor for Al Rashid Capital's American operations. She paused beneath the crystal chandelier, breathing in the mingled scent of fresh flowers and polished marble. Every detail of this place bore witness to her journey from carrying trays to shaping policy, and she carried the weight of that transformation with gratitude. "Ms. Williams," a familiar voice called. It was Carmen, the housekeeper who'd cheered Maya on from day one. She stood near the concierge desk, holding a small wrapped gift. When their eyes met, Carmen's broad grin lit up her warm face. "You did it," Carmen said simply, handing over the package. It was a delicate wooden jewelry box, scented faintly of sandalwood. "Carmen, open it," she urged. "You've earned it." Maya lifted the lid. Inside lay a brass token etched with the words, "Voice of Integrity," encircled by Arabic calligraphy. Caught between surprise and emotion, Maya held it close. Carmen reached out and squeezed her hand. "This belongs to you," Carmen said. "From everyone upstairs who says, thank you." Maya swallowed. She'd never thought she'd be honored for stepping forward. But here she was, in a place that had first overlooked her, now revering her courage. That afternoon, she sat in the concierge lounge with Veronica Ellison. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, lighting the steam off their tea. "They're planning a plaque," Veronica whispered. "In the lobby, in your honor." Maya blinked. "A plaque?" Veronica nodded. "Under your brass token, they want the inscription to read, 'Saved by a voice that refused to stay silent.' It'll be visible to every guest who enters." Maya felt a warmth deep in her chest. She pictured travelers, executives, visitors pausing, reading those words, perhaps remembering that it's never too late to speak up. That evening, the construction crew came in quietly. They placed a small brass plaque at the base of the concierge desk. Evening light caught its shine as Maya brushed past on her way out. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amal. "Native communities in Minnesota and Arizona have been informed. They're mobilizing long-term monitoring teams. You started something bigger than us." Maya closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just corporate change. It was real-world justice reaching distant corners, clean water, accountability, broken promises being mended. A week later, Maya attended the public unveiling of the plaque. A small crowd gathered: employees, Gulf partners, journalists, hotel guests. A Gulf board member gave a short speech, voice full of gratitude. Then Veronica invited Maya forward. Cameras clicked. Microphones caught her smiling face. She cleared her throat. "I don't know what size this plaque is," Maya began, "but I know what size our voices can be, no matter where we come from, no matter what we do. A maid can carry a message. A maid can ask a question. And that's where courage starts." She looked out at the faces, some curious, some emotional. This plaque isn't mine. It belongs to every person here who chooses clarity over convenience, justice over silence, truth over comfort. Let it remind us, when you speak someone listens. Polite applause turned into genuine ovation. Cameras snapped. The lights reflected off the plaque, casting warm tones across hopeful faces. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Carmen hugged Maya tightly. "You did it," she whispered again. Maya nodded. "We did it." That night, she sat on her rooftop in Queens, the city's lights sprawling like stars at her feet. She held the brass token and scrolled through texts, messages of support from colleagues, tribe leaders, former classmates, even her mother's old friend, calling to congratulate her. Somewhere in the city, water was being tested. Somewhere, someone was finally heard. Maya smiled and tucked the token into her pocket beside her father's compass. She looked up at the moon, clear and steadfast. Her journey hadn't ended, it was just beginning. The plaque and the accolades were proof that integrity has a place in towers of glass and steel. But real power? That lived in quiet persistence, hard choices, and the courage to speak when silence seemed easier. The wind stirred, and Maya closed her eyes. This city would always hum with ambition, noise, compromise, but one voice had risen above it, and in that echo, others found their strength. Spring sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Al Rashid Capital's executive lounge, catching motes of dust that floated over the polished mahogany table. Maya Williams sat between Sheikh Hassan Al Rashid and Veronica Ellison. The newly formed Ethics Council gathered around them. Today's agenda: formalizing the new Integrity Charter and adapting it to projects beyond the U.S. Maya's heart pounded as she reviewed her notes, a testament to how far she'd come from wiping lobbies to shaping corporate philosophy. Sheikh Hassan cleared his throat. "We have seen how one voice changed our course. Now, we must ensure that voice becomes a chorus." He glanced at Maya. "The Integrity Charter will. You present its framework?" Maya rose, feeling the council's attention lock on her. She clicked a remote, and the screen displayed the charter's key pillars: transparency, accountability, inclusivity, cultural sensitivity, and community partnership. She pointed to each icon. Transparency requires open reporting of redirected funds and accessible audit trails. Accountability means no one, regardless of rank, outside our ethics walls. Inclusivity ensures teams reflect diverse perspectives. Cultural sensitivity mandates review from local stakeholders before contracts sign. And community partnership commits a percentage of profits to original project communities. Veronica added, "This charter also includes mandatory training for all levels and an anonymous reporting hotline monitored by the Ethics Council." Sheikh Hassan nodded thoughtfully. "A bold charter. What do you anticipate will be its greatest challenge?" Maya paused. "Resistance from those accustomed to opacity. Some board members see this as bureaucracy. Some regional teams may view transparency as weakness. We must show them its strength." An American partner spoke up. "How do we apply this globally, say, in East Asia or Africa, without imposing American values?" Maya answered carefully. "We adapt the principles, not the intent. Cultural sensitivity means local councils review contracts before regions launch projects. Our goal isn't to enforce compliance, we enforce respect." A partner from Dubai raised a point. "And whistleblower protections, will they include visas and relocation support?" Maya had anticipated this. "Yes, any reporter of misconduct will receive legal and financial support to relocate if needed. No fear of retaliation, no visa jeopardy." There was a moment of tense silence. Then Sheikh Hassan said, "This is more than policy, it is legacy. And if you believe in this, you will lead its oversight. Maya, will you serve as chair?" Maya paused. The weight of the role pressed on her chest. She thought of her father's words: "Justice often begins with one mind willing to act." She looked at Veronica's supportive nod. "I accept," she said softly. A murmured round of respect passed through the council. Veronica reached out and squeezed her hand. As the council disbanded, Maya was met by Amal and Angelina in the hallway. Amal's eyes glowed. "You did it." Angelina raised her phone. "Board minutes say you're now chair of Ethics Global Oversight." Maya exhaled. "That means responsibility beyond these walls." "Yes," Amal said, "but also means we change more than one deal." That evening, Maya returned to her Brooklyn apartment. She carried an envelope with official council stationery. Inside, her appointment letter and the printed final integrity charter. She placed it on the bookshelf beside her father's compass and the brass token. A moment of quiet pride settled over her. Then the phone rang. Veronica. Are you free tomorrow morning? Her voice crackled over the line. For breakfast? Yes. We'll meet the leaders of the Midwest Community Coalition. They want to define local oversight metrics for clean water projects. Maya smiled. I'd be honored. The next morning, Maya stood before a small circle of community leaders, tribal coordinators, environmental engineers, local educators in a modest building in Minneapolis. They were here because projects tied to Al-Rashid needed transparent metrics, and Maya's council aimed to deliver that. She spoke plainly. We want your input. How do we know funds reach the wells? How do we measure sustainability? How should the board be accountable? An elder named Thomas Gray Eagle, speaking through a translator, nodded. We measure health, children's blood, school attendance, fish in the river. That is true impact. Maya scribbled diligently. Other leaders asked about financial reporting, quarterly town halls, oversight committees. A tribal teacher suggested youth apprenticeships tied to project maintenance. Each idea felt like building a bridge between boardrooms and living rooms. Back in the evening, Maya reviewed her notes, feeling a deeper sense of connection. The council's charter had taken root in policy, but here, it began to bloom in real lives. At midnight, Maya stepped onto her rooftop again. The city lights glimmered. She held the integrity charter in her hands, letters white and bold. We commit to justice through action. She closed her eyes and listened. City hum, distant siren, wind on brick. A part of her wondered, could this ripple out beyond projects, beyond corporations? Could this be a model for systems everywhere? A distant church bell struck midnight, echoing back more than 12 hours. Maya whispered into the night, we will see. The next morning would come as it always did. And with it, more contracts, more communities, more testings of the charter's strength. But for the first time, she knew. The threshold had been crossed. Integrity, once optional, was now foundational. And this time, everyone could see it. The boardroom on the 37th floor was filled with city light, though today. That brightness only underscored the seriousness in the air. Maya sat at the center of the Ethics Council panel, the integrity charter gleaming in front of her. Around the table, Gulf partners, regional managers, and corporate attorneys waited. This was the first quarterly review since the charter's implementation, and expectations were high. Maya opened the meeting with a nod. Thank you all for attending. Today, we'll hear reports not only on financial compliance, but also on impact. How our projects affect communities, stakeholders, and partners. Vat, a regional director from West Africa, dressed in a crisp suit and patterned tie, was the first speaker. Our solar initiative in Ghana exceeded expectations. Thanks to your transparent bidding, local contractors were engaged. We funded junior engineers, and local schools have operational solar installations under student stewardship. Nods and murmurs of approval followed. The man smiled. We're creating accountability and opportunity. Maya spoke up. Thank you. Can you share the measurable metrics you use to demonstrate project success to stakeholders? He activated a slide. Percent uptime, training hours, reports of school attendance, clean, energy production compared to projected targets. Maya glanced at Sheila Carter, an NGO monitor present via video link from Nairobi. Sheila nodded. Their data model aligns with our oversight metrics choices. This is promising. Next, a representative from Texas spoke about clean water wells for a Navajo community. We tracked water pH monthly, tested nitrate levels, and asked locals to submit quarterly reports. We published results on a public portal. A Gulf partner leaned in. Publish publicly? That's quite bold. The Texas manager replied, transparency builds trust, and trust builds sustainability. Maya acknowledged this. Now let's address compliance issues observed this quarter. A compliance auditor stood. We flagged 5 contracts containing ambiguous clauses resembling override language. 4 have been resolved via clarification. 1 remains pending review with regional counsel. Maya traced her pen sharply. Which contract? A Southeast Asian logistics deal, he said. It still contains a clause allowing retroactive adjustment based on operational exigencies. Heads turned. Maya's heart thudded. This was the moment they'd warned about charter under pressure where opacity returned. "May I?" she said and walked to the screen. Pulling the draft up, she read aloud. "Should operational exigencies arise, the provider will evaluate and adjust the agreement unilaterally." She stopped. "That's override by another name." A Gulf counsel interjected quietly. "But operational exigencies exist." "Yes," Maya agreed. "But not without mutual review. We need a revision, specify triggers, define mutual deliberation, set sunset clauses." A debate followed. Attorneys worried legal complexity. Regional teams cited local regulations. Maya listened, then addressed them all. "We drafted this charter to uphold integrity without clarity. Regulations become loopholes." Silence. Then the Gulf partner spoke. "I propose a pilot amendment. Adjust this clause to include explicit approval from both regional oversight and local community council. Let's monitor its effect." Maya nodded. "Agreed. And we'll review the results next quarter." The meeting closed with votes taken, smiles shared, and a sense of cautious accomplishment. That evening, Maya returned to Brooklyn to a community fundraiser for a new water study in Minnesota. Veronica was there, greeting attendees. Maya spotted a tribal elder she'd met in Minneapolis. It was their third initiative together. They embraced. The elder whispered, "The well is clean now. Children drink." They laugh again. Maya's eyes filled. "That's your work." "We did it together," the elder replied. Maya looked around the hall. Volunteers, fiscal analysts, smiling families. Integrity wasn't just on paper, it was echoing across towns, schools, nations. Back home, Maya prepared for a late-night call. It was Elijah Rowe, whose retired life had resumed but whose influence was far from gone. "They're using your model in 2 African solar bids," he said proudly. "Transparency measures baked into contracts." "It's spread, Maya." She paused. "We've crossed a line where trust became transactional." He laughed. "You turned your echo into a wave." Maya smiled. Her father's compass and her brass token sat together on her desk, symbols of direction and integrity. She looked out at the city, where lights shimmered like promises. This wasn't just a campaign, it was a movement. A movement that had begun when a maid spoke up and now carried across oceans. A low spring rain drizzled over Manhattan as Maya Williams stepped off the elevator and entered the lean, high-ceilinged boardroom. Today's meeting agenda was unexpectedly brief. She had called it herself. The board's newest directive hung in the air, piloting an integrity council model for other firms and nonprofits. Maya's heart pounded, knowing this marked a new phase. Veronica arrived moments later and gave Maya a reassuring nod. The room filled quickly with partners, compliance officers, and 2 external consultants from major foundations. Maya opened with a calm breath. "Thank you all for joining on short notice. We stand at a juncture not just of ethics within our organization, but at a point to demonstrate leadership across our industry." She clicked to the first slide. Phase 1. Confidential rollout within sister firms. The slide displayed a simple plan of pilot councils embedded in Rashid's regional offices across Asia and Africa. Below, bullet points read, shared reporting platform, community engagement metrics, and annual transparency awards. Veronica followed. "We've already seeded the pilot in Nairobi and Singapore. Initial results show a 40% decrease in contract disputes and increased local hiring." Murmurs rose around the table. Maya clicked again. Phase 2. External partnerships. We will invite 2 major foundations to adopt our model in their grant partner agreements. We've drafted letters to the Gates Foundation and Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. One Gulf partner raised a hand. "Our board must see financial projections for this expansion. What's the ROI, or do we treat it as expense?" Maya responded, "The return isn't immediate revenue, it's reputational capital, mitigated risk, and long-term partnership leverage. We estimate a 15% increase in investor confidence, calculated through reduced due diligence costs and enhanced credit ratings." A senior financial officer leaned forward. "That's compelling, but how do we measure it?" Maya smiled. "We track discount spreads on green bonds, investor survey scores, and secondary market performance for projects under the Integrity Council versus controls. The finance exec nodded thoughtfully. Phase 3, Maya explained, involved publicly publishing a yearly integrity impact report benchmarked across projects, a move both bold and transparent. Another consultant asked, "What if this reveals failures or non-compliance?" Veronica answered firmly, "Because it will, and that's the point." Maya added, "We will highlight success but also areas for improvement. Openness breeds trust beyond perfection." There was a pause as the room absorbed the implications. Operating on this scale meant vulnerability. But an executive from Dubai spoke next. "I support this. If we truly stand for integrity, we own both our light and our shadows." Heads nodded. The board accepted the pilot unanimously. After the meeting, supporters clustered around Maya and Veronica, offering congratulations and handshakes. But the pivot felt bigger than applause. It was purposeful. Later that evening, Maya attended a private reception at the Metropolitan Museum's Modern Wing, where Al-Rashid was unveiling a new art sponsorship. Among the guests were NGO leaders, Gulf dignitaries, and foundation representatives. Maya spotted the Gates Foundation lead, Dr. Elena Torres, chatting near a sculpture on ethics. Taking a breath, Maya approached. "Dr. Torres, thank you for coming." Her voice softened under soft gallery lighting. Dr. Torres turned. "Miss Williams, I've heard remarkable things." Maya smiled. "I wanted to invite you to review our Integrity Council model. Your insight would be invaluable." The foundation director nodded. "Send me the proposal. I believe there's real potential here." Maya exhaled quietly. This moment symbolized tangible growth beyond her organization, a bridge into broader impact. That night, Maya and Veronica met quietly on the rooftop of the hotel sponsoring the gala. Rain had ceased. City lights danced across wet streets. "You did it," Veronica said, handing Maya a warm drink. "We did," Maya corrected. She gestured to the skyline. "Look how far this can go." Veronica sipped slowly. "I'd like to see this model go global with you leading." Maya paused, then nodded. "Let's build that roadmap." As midnight approached, Maya reflected on how this pivot echoed her first act, interrupting a meeting with bold truth. That act alerted a world ready for integrity. She thought of her father's compass and Elijah's ledger, of children sipping cleaner water and communities empowered. And she understood, if speaking up began it, this pivot made it legacy. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amal. Integrity Council invitation went out internationally. Responses already coming. Maya closed her eyes, breathing deep. Rain had washed the city calm, but tomorrow, that calm bore an undercurrent of change. A pivot that started here could now recalibrate systems. Tonight, Maya Williams stood at another threshold, not just within a corporation, but the turning point of what integrity could mean. And this time, she wasn't just the voice. She was the architect. Maya arrived at the Sheikh's suite at precisely 9 a.m. The early light glinted off the polished marble floors of Al-Rashid Capital's top floor, marking this day as different, more consequential, more final. She carried a slim tablet, loaded with the complete dossier. Legacy Holdings ledgers, diverted EJI funds, shell company links, transcripts of incriminating emails, and Elijah Rowe's sworn affidavit. Today, she would guide the Sheikh through the full truth. As she entered, Sheikh Hassan looked up from his desk. He nodded once, a gesture of both greeting and gravity. He'd arranged this to be privatino witnesses, no fanfare. Just truth spoken plainly, as a test of their resolve. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Maya set the tablet on the desk and tapped the screen. "Yesterday, we presented the public summary. Now, the full disclosure." She began with the transaction chains, line by line, date by date, explaining payments routed through Delaware, Singapore, Cayman, Nevada, always diverted from approved community projects. The Sheikh traced his fingertip over a digital flowchart, his expression unreadable. She spoke with care, clarity, and compassion, aware this moment would define more than a contract. It would define trust. Moving on to email evidence, Maya narrated each exchange in calm English, pausing when Sheikh looked away, allowing the weight of betrayal to land. She emphasized the roles of Philip Warren, Harold Covington, and other unnamed complicit executives. These memos aren't allegations, they are confessions. The Sheikh leaned back, absorbing. His gaze went distant, perhaps lost in memory of the communities betrayed. When she reached Elijah's affidavit, she tapped the quote, "I kept copies because the work mattered more than the firm." The sheikh closed his eyes as though absorbing the moral weight. Maya paused. His silence said enough. Finally, she offered the tablet. "I invite your questions. Our next step is yours." He looked up. His face was inscrutable. "You've given me my sight back," he said softly. "I was blind, trusted structure more than people." He closed the tablet gently. "Your disclosure is full, and your courage, clear." Maya watched his eyes. "What happens now?" He rose and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. Rain clouds gathered. He folded his hands behind his back. "We repair, we pay restitution, we restructure. We rebuild trust not only here, but in every place we impact." He turned. "I want you leading oversight, with full authority, and final say on project disbursements." He extended his hand. "Will you do that?" Maya paused. Thoughts, spinning community voices, boardroom battles, late nights tracing funds, her father's compass. She took his hand. "Yes." He nodded firmly. "Then, together, we'll make this company something worthy of the name it holds." Back in her Brooklyn apartment that night, Maya held the tablet close. The road ahead would test her defining new standards, ensuring restitution, confronting resistance. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. Her father's compass and brass token by her side, symbols of direction and integrity. She thought of Elijah Rowe's quiet bravery, of tribal elders who trusted her, of Veronica who believed, of every child whose water might now be safe, of justice lived, not just spoken. She realized the disclosure didn't end the journey, it began a deeper one. The city lights shimmered through her window. Somewhere beyond skyscrapers and streets, systems that had been built on convenience and compromise would now feel tremors of change. Maya closed her eyes, remembering her father's words, "Justice doesn't sleep, it wakes us." She whispered into the still night, "Then let it be awake." And tomorrow, it would begin again. Sunlight filtered through the frosted glass door of Maya's new office, labeled in brass letters, "Maya Williams, Global Ethics Advisor." It was a quiet, dignified space overlooking the East River, lined with shelves holding binders, artifacts from community engagements, and atop her desk, the brass token and her father's compass. That nameplate didn't just mark her office, it marked progress. She stepped in on her first official day, greeted by Amal and Angelina, who had arrived early. "Looking good," Angelina said with a half-smile. Amal handed her a large manila envelope, the deployment schedule for the Integrity Council pilots across 3 continents: Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. "It's happening," Amal said softly. They sat at the round table. Veronica, already there, had coffee ready. "Congratulations," she said. "So, where do we start?" Maya took a breath. "We follow the roadmap from our pilot hand. We refine it for global complexity. We'll conduct ethics workshops in Mexico City next week, then gap assessments in Romania, and community roundtables in Bangkok." Veronica nodded. "Board wants your full report in 60 days. Maya turned to Amal. "We also need local auditors and cultural consultants in each region." Amal agreed. "We've identified partners." She gestured to Angelina. "Angelina's compiling baseline data now." Maya pressed send on the envelope. "Today, we begin building a global nameplate not just for me, but for every community we serve." That afternoon, Maya visited the hotel lobby plaque, a quiet moment of reflection. She ran her fingertips gently over the engraved words. Staff passed her, offering polite nods. In one glance, she felt the full weight of what she'd earned and the responsibilities that lay ahead. 2 days later, Maya presented to a board call with international partners watching via video link. She wore a sleek navy suit, professional yet warm. The digital slides displayed new progress: draft charters, recruitment of advisors, and a pilot summary from Latin America. A São Paulo representative smiled through the screen. "Our regional advisory board is ready to review. We've added indigenous leaders and local NGOs." A Romanian consultant echoed. "Our compliance review began today. Training materials look solid." In Bangkok, a young woman spoke about tribal participation in project oversight. "Communities feel heard," she said. Maya nodded, feeling emboldened. This is progress. But we need to share among regions replicate best practices without imposing learning from one another. Questions rose on currency fluctuations, data privacy, legal jurisdictions. Maya and her team answered with clarity, and each response strengthened the network's confidence. After the call closed, Veronica squeezed Maya's shoulder. You held the room. Maya's heart fluttered. We built the room. That evening, Maya returned to her apartment to find a package from Elijah Rowe. Inside were old photographs Elijah in the firm's office 30 years ago. Younger Veronica, even Maya's father in early philanthropic visits. A note, keep memories close, they remind us why. Maya placed them beside her compass. Tears pricked her eyes. In each photograph, she saw lineage, integrity handed down, commitment passed forward. A week later, Maya attended a quiet ceremony at Empire Grand Hotel's lobby. A second plaque had been placed, this one recognizing the initiative. Integrity Council, Global Launch, with Maya's name beneath. Veronica stood with her, and they watched guests pause, read, and comment. A businessman asked who Maya was. A young intern snapped a photo for Instagram. Maya smiled, knowing her nameplate wasn't just brass, it was emblematic of what accountability looked like. That night, Maya walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. The city lights stretched into the horizon. She touched the pocket that held her compass and token, and thought of tomorrow. Meetings in Roma, virtual sessions with Sao Paulo, Skype calls with Bangkok. A global web of ethics advisors, local monitors, community partners. She whispered into the night wind. This is just the beginning. Through the misty glow, the bridge stood strong. And so would the movement she'd helped forge. Maya Williams landed in Mexico City at dawn, the sprawling capital waking beneath a rose-tinged sky. She stepped off the plane, suitcase in hand, and was greeted by Carlos Mendoza, a local consultant and longtime supporter of transparency movements in Latin America. They shared a brief embrace, both acutely aware that what they were doing here was larger than any single contract or firm. This was an experiment and a promise carried across hemispheres. Their first stop was a modest government office in a historic district, its walls lined with framed watercolor murals and rows of small wooden desks. Carlos introduced Maya to regional stakeholders, community organizers, environmental engineers, municipal auditors, members of indigenous councils, and legal advocates. They greeted her with respect, not default deference, but expectancy. They'd been preparing for this moment. Maya cleared her throat. Thank you for being here. We're here to listen and learn, to build an ethics council that belongs to this city, not to us. She tapped her binder, local language charters, bilingual training materials, baseline data from initial audits. A council member named Sophia, representing a neighborhood affected by industrial runoff, spoke first. Our community has been promised remediation before. Money came, but canals remain polluted. She leveled eyes at Maya. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen this time? Maya nodded. By making funding and oversight visible. By ensuring community monitors nominated by your neighborhood shave direct reporting authority, and by structuring disbursement so money is released in phases tied to milestones, verified on site. Another attendee, a municipal auditor, raised the issue of mistrust between government and private sector. We've seen half-completed projects because politics change. How do you protect against that? Amal, sitting with Maya, responded. The council includes provisions for binding community agreements. These are registered in municipal charters and audits are public. Changing administrations won't erase them. A tribal elder spoke through Carlos's translation. In our culture, a promise is a pact. We understand legal terms, but we also need the spirit. He placed a hand on Maya's arm. This feels like a pact. Later that afternoon, they toured a canal near the city's outskirts, where funds had earlier been meant for water treatment. Maya walked with Sophia and municipal engineers, inspecting pipes, gauges, and water tests. They stopped at a vandalized sign that read, Proyecto Limpio, a remnant of a failed public project. Maya knelt and placed a small token from her pocket, a brass, Voice of Integrity emblem beside the broken post. It wasn't a fix, But it was a promise. Back in the evening, Carlos and Maya met at a local cafe. Over coffee and churros, they reviewed the day's notes. Pilot charters refined with local input, training modules adapted for Spanish speakers, council members nominated from affected neighborhoods. They sketched a plan for presenting the model to local media next week, ensuring transparency from day one. Before sleeping, Maya sent a brief encrypted update to Sheikh Hassan. Mexico City pilot launched. Local council formed. First milestones scheduled. The reply came quickly. Your work lights the path. Continue. 2 days later, Maya participated in a live televised forum hosted by a respected local journalist. She stood on a small stage with Sophia and other council founders. The headline questions: will this pilot succeed? Is it just greenwashing? Can foreign firms be trusted? Maya spoke clearly. This isn't PR. It's structural. We built safeguards before contracts were awarded. We opened funding timelines publicly. We elected monitors who report to their communities and to independent auditors. She looked into the camera. If we fail, we will own it openly and learn openly. That's how trust deepens, not in secrecy, but in shared accountability. When the show ended, the audience applauded. Backstage, Sophia hugged her. They believe it, she whispered. Maya left feeling both exhilarated and solemn. This model was no longer contained. It was moving outward, and every step carried risks. If Mexico succeeded, others would follow. If it faltered, critics would pounce. The next day, Maya flew to Bucharest, where Eastern European NGOs awaited her. The pilot workshop began nearly identical, yet unique. Questions here centered on digital data security, refugee integration, institutional corruption. But the framework she'd shaped fit, like pieces of a bridge molded to different foundations. By the week's end, pilot councils would be established in 5 cities. The ripple had begun with integrity as its current. On the flight back to New York, Maya looked down at her reflection in the window, tired, hopeful, determined. She touched the brass token in her pocket. The skyline below reminded her how one voice could echo until it became movement. She thought of her father's compass pointing true north today. It guided not just her, but thousands following in her steps. Integrity wasn't static. It was alive, spreading, anchoring itself in new soil. And this ripple? It was unstoppable. The morning sun streamed through the lobby's grand entrance, glinting off the brass plaque Maya had installed nearly 6 months ago, saved by a voice that refused to stay silent. Guests and employees paused to read it, lighting brief sparks of conversation. The lobby was alive, pulsing with energy that transcended polished marble. Maya stepped through the lobby with purpose, her ID badge glinting against her blazer. Global Ethics Advisor, Al Rashid Capital. Carmen observed her from behind the concierge desk, their eyes meeting in a moment of mutual recognition and pride. Later, Maya joined Veronica in the conference room overlooking the Hudson. Several journalists, NGO leaders, and board members were gathered. Today was not just a routine meeting, it was the official launch of the Integrity Council's encyclopedia, a compendium of best practices, case studies, and standardized metrics to guide ethics work globally. Veronica opened the session. Today, we publish the first edition of our Integrity Encyclopedia, a tool for transparency, but more importantly, for accountability. A Latin American ambassador spoke next. This is a blueprint we can adapt to our national infrastructure projects. A Nigerian NGO representative added, this shows how business and community can co-create accountability. Maya, invited to speak, looked at the assembled crowd. She began. This encyclopedia isn't an instruction manual, it's a testament. It's the lived experiences of communities, council members, and professionals who chose clarity over convenience, justice over ease. Within these pages, you'll find case studies from Mexico, Romania, Thailand, Minnesotastries of monitoring wells, editing contracts, reconstructing trust. Each chapter shows how voices once unseen can reshape systems. She let the pause linger, allowing that truth to settle. Then she continued. At Empire Grand, beneath this lobby, a maid spoke truth. That moment echoed across boardrooms, across continents. Now, that echo becomes guidance. If you carry this encyclopedia into your communities, You carry not just policy, but legacy. Applause followed not for Maya alone, but for what she and hundreds of others had made possible. Cameras flashed. Veronica placed a signed first copy in Maya's hands, a gesture of ceremony, friendship, solidarity. After the event, Maya returned to the lobby and stood before the plaque again. Carmen approached. "Maya," she said softly, "look around." Around them, employees smiled as visitors read the words aloud. A family paused. A child asked about the phrase, refused to stay silent. Carmen teased Maya gently. "Your story is in their story now." Maya exhaled. "It's theirs." That afternoon, she received a message from the sheikh. "Integrity Encyclopedia live. My respect and gratitude." Beneath the message lay a small graphic, a compass overlaid with a globe and the words "True North." She showed it to Veronica. "Looks like more than a compass now." Veronica smiled. It's legacy. Evening found Maya on her Brooklyn rooftop, city lights blazing like constellations. She traced her fingers over the brass token and her father's compass. She reflected on each chapter, from the first word spoken in a boardroom to the ripple across continents. It all began with courage and would transform systems. Her phone buzzed again this time. A message from Elijah Rowe. "Well done. Your echo will carry farther than any of us can walk." Maya closed her eyes, breathing deep. In the lobby below, her story sat in brass. In boardrooms and communities around the world, her work lived in real lives. Integrity wasn't statistics, it had become architecture, infrastructure, ethos. She thought of those who came before, her father marching, Carmen cheering, Veronica believing, Elijah preserving, and those who would follow, community leaders, interns, young professionals. Each would build upon this foundation. Maya whispered into the night air, "Let's keep walking." And as the city whispered back a mosaic of distant hums, laughter, car horns, she understood, the echo would never end. It would carry until silence was only a memory. And truth became the sound that shaped the world.